Jay, we're back again with another episode thanks to our Dig Me Out Union on Patreon. You can help us make the next episode happen by joining us at dmounion.com or digmeoutunion.com. Welcome back, Chip.
Always
Just
happy
jumping
to be
right
here.
into it.
We
It's
need
been
a
little
Chip.
bit.
We need a Chip theme song.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll work
Let's
on that.
No, we got to get some 90s band to do it.
We don't
a little
have
jingle.
the budget for hiring. I can go on to GarageBand and pre-select 90s grunge band loop, and that will be the sound.
There you go. That works.
Metal Zone pedal. Hey, you talked to someone. That's why you're here. Who did you talk to?
So I don't want to necessarily say bucket list because I have interviewed this person before and I've met him before, but it is always cool to talk to Art Alexakis from Everclear, and that's who I talked to very recently. World of Noise, the band's debut album, was put out on Kerr Records in I think 1993. It got some traction, and in fact, in the interview, Art tells a story about how it got that traction and how Capitol ended up signing them. But then Capitol re-released it, and it has not hit streaming services. It's one of those rare albums that has not made it to any of the services. And on June 10th, the album will officially be on streaming services. And then coming later this year, there's going to be a vinyl reissue of it. So the opportunity to talk to Art came about because he was doing some promotion for the World of Noise reissue.
Excellent. Yeah, we have talked about that record, I believe, Jay, on this very podcast.
It's one of our 600 episodes.
One of our 600. Yes.
So there are points in the interview, we chatted a little bit before I hit record. And so there are some references that I think they'll make sense anyway, but a couple things. I have met Art before, like I mentioned. I interviewed him on the phone in 94, 95. He doesn't remember that, and I'm not sure that I remember that so much, but after Sparkling Fate came out, they were on tour. They were headlining. No Doubt was opening on that tour, which is pretty crazy to think about. And I had a friend who worked at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and they were playing in Cleveland. And so I hooked up, my wife and I picked Everclear up at the hotel they were staying at and took them to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, took them on a little bit of a tour. They had a radio interview that day. And so we only got to do like a really quick pass through, probably maybe 30 minutes. But I did, mention that to him before we did the interview. And so I think at some point we talked about that. He remembers going to the Hall of Fame. He was nice enough, I think, to say that he remembered me from that, but I'm not sure that he did.
Yeah.
And then also probably 6 or 7 years ago, my daughter interviewed Art for Kids Interview Bands. And it was kind of cool when I first joined the Zoom call with Art. I mentioned that was my daughter that had done that. And he's got a 14-year-old daughter. And he was like, we were just watching that last week. I was showing her how this little girl interviewed me. So he does remember that. So it was a cool conversation.
Excellent.
Very cool to have that much personal connection.
Yeah.
And you guys have been through this before, right? Like, it's cool for me because I remember all these things, but I'm sure he's been interviewed by like 2,000 journalists, and I'm sure he remembers very few of these chance encounters. But that's the kind of thing that's a cool thing with meeting bands is like when bands are cool to you, that as fans or as interviewers, like you'll remember that forever, which is a cool thing, which is why all bands should be nice to their fans.
Yeah, you might end up doing an interview with them 30 years later.
Yeah,
yeah, right. Exactly. That's a lesson. Know. That's a lesson to you, Shawn Mendes, or whatever popular artist of the time that I don't know what they sound like, but I heard their name before. Let's get into it. Let's talk about, or let's let Chip share his interview with Art from Everclear.
So I will tell you that I think you're making a lot of fans happy. I'm in a lot of like music discussion boards and stuff, and everybody has noticed that World of Noise is not available on streaming services. So
trust me, they tell me. I know.
Yeah. And if I'm understanding correctly, like you've had sort of possession of the masters for a while now.
Well, I've owned them. I've owned them from the beginning. I paid for them, not the band, not TK, nobody. I paid for it. I own them through all the entities. Capitol, their first contact was like, we'd like you to surrender these for the price of $1. And I'm like, wait a minute. You want me to give you my first album, which I've broke my butt trying to sell, and I've sold at this point 60,000 records without you, which for an indie record is huge.
Oh yeah.
And you want me to give you the record? I laughed in the face of the president of Capitol. He's like, "You're laughing in my face." I go, "Yeah, I am. That's not going to happen. If that's a deal breaker, then thanks for the dinner, man. The dinner was awesome. Thanks for the steak."
Yeah.
No, I've held on to it. It's been out of print since 1999. Never went to social media at like what you're talking about. It's been kind of a relentless, not a storm, but a relentless river of people bugging me to put it on social media. It ebbs and goes ups and down, but I found the tapes. I found the master tapes here at my studio. Me and Freddie did, and we're like, and it was January of 2022. I'm like, it's the 30th anniversary. We should put these out and make a big deal about it. Yeah. And we did. That's what we've done.
So it's going to be streaming in June, and then I think I read a vinyl release as well.
Yeah, we're working on. I just looked at the approved and actually made some changes to the artwork. We're doing a fold out, and there's going to be. We're doing an original run of 2,000 copies of the vinyl, and the first 1,000 is going to have. You can buy the option of having a 7-inch 45 in the record, like in the gatefold. So yeah, that's going to be really cool.
I can't remember what I had for lunch 3 days ago, so I'm gonna ask you some questions about 30 years ago, and if you don't remember, that's totally cool. But I love looking at liner notes, and I do have the CD. I think I have the Capitol version of the CD, but I was looking at the kind of the credits, and I'm just wondering, do you keep in touch with, is it Carl Brummer, Rob Cunningham, Mike Locke, Darren Lewis, any of those guys?
No, and there's specific reasons for most of them. Carl Brummer, I didn't know Carl. I mean, I saw him over a fence. I was digging out a garden for an extra $100 of a friend of my wife's. She's like, "Go make some money." I'm like, "Okay." And I look over the wall, and there's these hipster-looking guys and this one hippie-looking guy, Carl, going out in and out of this basement. And I'm like, "That's a drug deal, dude." I might be clean and sober 4 years, but I know a drug deal when I see one. And he came out later. He goes, "Hey, man, aren't you the guy from that band Evergreen or whatever the hell that is? I saw you guys down at the Belmont Tavern." I go, "Everclear." Yeah. And so what's going on over there, dude? See you guys going in and out. He goes, "I got a 4-track studio. Want to check it out? Or an 8-track studio. You want to check it out?" And I'm like, "Well, yes, I do." Jumped over the fence, put my shovel down, jumped over the fence, went over there and looked at it. And I'm like, it was old school, egg crates, foam. But he had some decent mics. He had a Fostex 319, I think, the 1/4-inch 8-track. He had some effects. He was saying, "Man, I really want to get a digital delay and a reverb." And I go, "Well, I happen to have a quad reverb, which is an old thing they don't make anymore, but and a Lexicon digital delay. And will you trade me for time?" And he's like, "Yeah, bring it over." And I brought it over. He goes, I thought he was going to give me like $200. He goes, "I'll give you $400 in recording." I go, "Okay, that's $10 an hour, $40, 40 hours of recording. I can record every song we got. We have 12 songs. We can record every song we got right now." And we did it in the next 2 weeks, mixed it and remixed it over the next couple months. And one of the things I wanted to do with it, I didn't tell Craig and Scott, the guys in the band, is we were having a hard time. I didn't know if this was the band, right?
Yeah.
I didn't know if this was the band, and I wanted to hear what we had. And you can't really do that when you're playing it. You gotta listen to a recording. So I'm like, this is a low-dough way of doing it. I don't have a lot of money right now. I had so little money, I couldn't afford to put new tubes in my amp. That's why my amp is squealing all the time, and I only had one guitar because I lost one from a pawn shop, because I missed it by taking the ticket back by a day, and they took my guitar. I had a Fender Tele, and they took it, so I had this hollow body Gretsch, or Guild rather, and it was feeding back constantly, like, ah! So I named the record Worlds of Noise. But I wanted to see what I had, and I went in, we recorded and mixed, and I'm like, okay, there's something there. I get it. You know, I played it for my girlfriend, and she's like, this is pretty badass. Yeah, I go, okay. So I sent it to South by Southwest, and they called me back 2 weeks later, called me, and said, you have two showcases. Can you show up in first week of March? And I'm like, sure. I had no idea how we're going to afford to get there, you know?
Yeah.
But man, when there's a will, there's a way. And we figured it out. But before we went out of town, I scraped up enough money to get, like, go to this place and get 25 copies of the tape, right? And with a new cover and lyric sheet and a bio, and put it all into a white envelope, 8.5 by 11 white envelope, and we mailed them out to every club in the Northwest, Portland, all over, even in Spokane, papers, everything, you know, that we could get something going. And sent them out before we left, toured down to Texas. Coming back, I get a frantic text on my pager. Remember pagers?
Yeah.
And I call my girlfriend. I go, "What's up?" And she goes, "You need to get home now." And I go, "I'm in Iowa, or Idaho." So I'm out in the middle of nowhere. I
Yeah.
go, "I'm coming home." She goes, "Come home now." She goes, "There's like 60 messages on our phone machine, and everybody in town is writing about you. Even in the Rocket, they're calling you the best new band of Portland."
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? So yeah, it just kind of blew up.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't write that story. That's just,
No.
I mean, that's just like magic. That's the stuff when you're in a band, you dream of stuff like that happening. And yeah, so that's what got it going. And
So,
then go ahead.
Oh, I would say between Colorfinger and Everclear, was Everclear maybe a last ditch effort, or was it like, I'm going to keep doing this until it catches on somewhere? Or
this was my last band. I seriously, it was my last band. I
Yeah.
talked about it when I go to my 12-step meetings, and you know, I did steps on it. This was my last band. I committed to my girlfriend, this is my last band. If we can't do this when the baby's like a year or two older, we should move to LA, and I'll get a job at a label, and I'll be a president of the label in 5 years, I guarantee you.
And
like,
until you're 30 years later, and you've done label stuff, right? Like have you done A&R stuff? And
kind of lamely. I mean, I could have done it better in hindsight, but yeah, I've had my own labels. I've been A&R for major labels. I've done that. I just always had too much. This is in hindsight, me being really honest. I didn't do it as well as I could have. But to be fair, when Capitol signed me as an A&R guy, it's because Geffen and Interscope wanted to sign me, and I went to Gary Gersh. I said, I'm going to give you a chance to give me the deal that they're going to give me, and because I don't want to embarrass you, you know. And he's like, great, I'll pay you way more than they're paying, and everything's great. I'll give you a better title. I go, great. He didn't say he would guarantee, and he told me later, I didn't tell you I was going to put your records out. I was going to sign your bands. I'm not doing that. And I'm like, and I can't tell you, Skip, who these bands are. I might put it in the book someday. We'll see. But out of the 10 bands I tried to push, 10 of them got signed to other labels. All of the 10 put out records, which is a big deal. They made a record that was good enough that the label put it out, and 4 of them were platinum or multi-platinum.
Wow.
You know those bands. You know the bands, and I could have signed them.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't let me. He wouldn't let me. He wouldn't, I guarantee he didn't even listen to it.
Yeah. So without naming those bands, because the podcast, like I said, is about overlooked and underappreciated records, what is an album from the 90s that you think that people should know about today that maybe didn't get the sales or acclaim that it should have?
Well, to be honest with you, from the earlier 90s, before we put our record out, the Muffs' first record, and I don't know if you're a fan of the Muffs or not.
Oh yeah.
But and Kim just died.
Yeah.
So we both have autoimmune diseases, but that first record is just amazing. That's the reason, and Billy Joe said it, that's the reason they signed with Rob Cavallo, because Rob Cavallo had signed and produced that Muffs record. And that first Muffs record is just classic. I think that's a record that should be in everybody's. If you like rock and roll, that should be in your album collection for sure.
For sure. So the thing that I remember when I got a Capitol, one of those, I'm of the 90s. I started writing in the 90s. And so, they used to put those compilation CDs together. And I think that's where I heard Fire Maple Song the first time. And that's what got me into why I bought World of Noise. And I think for me, World of Noise resonated because you sounded like every college band in Columbus or Ohio State, but better. You know what I mean? It was very like the sound was, I was hearing bands like Everclear a lot, but not at Everclear's level. And so when I heard this, I'm like, it was very comfortable and familiar, but it was that next step. And I think that's what turned me on to World of Noise so much, was that it wasn't, and I hope this isn't an insult, but it wasn't anything different or unusual, but it was like, it was just that much better.
I've never heard a band that sounded like World of Noise, so I would like to hear that. But I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
There was a lot of that, especially like Fire Maple Song of starting soft and building up and crescendo type stuff. But I do get it though, and I do think we had kind of a Midwest kind of thing to it, because I've always liked bands like that grew up in the Midwest, like before punk rock bands like REO Speedwagon. I love Kevin Cronin's voice.
Yeah.
So there's that lilt to my voice for sure. And I grew up singing country and R&B and all sorts of stuff like that. So I could see that. In Portland, we didn't sound like anybody.
So I mentioned, like I interviewed you, I did a phone interview with you between those albums, and you were touring. So the World of Noise, so it takes off, Capitol signs you, and you go on the road. What was that like the World of Noise tour versus Sparkle and Fade, when you're all of a sudden playing bigger theaters and selling stuff out? Was World of Noise a lot of making just enough gas money to get town to town, or were you starting to build a following at that point?
Well, define World of Noise tour like before Capitol or after Capitol?
I don't know. I never saw you on any of those.
Before Capitol, we're in a minivan. I had budgeted us to $4 a day, which at the time you could get two value meals.
Right.
And hopefully we could get a pizza and salad from a venue.
Yeah.
That was the reality of that touring. But after we signed to Capitol, I remember going out on tours, and I made him buy us a van. So we toured all that in 94 and early 95. We toured in the van. And but then when Sparkle and Fade came out, we were in a bus. We opened for Sponge in the Midwest and all over the country, I think. And that was a different world. Once you go to the bus, it's a different world.
Yeah.
And we went back to the van for a couple tours that summer, with a band called Hagfish opening up for us. But then we got a tour with Filter, opening up for Filter, and then we were on the bus, and I've been on the bus ever since.
Yeah.
Well, I guess August, September of '95. And if someone comes to me today, my business manager or manager goes, "Man, all right, can't afford the bus anymore. You got to go back to the van or a Sprinter van." I'd be like, "Well, I'm done, guys. That was a great run. I had a great run. That's awesome. See ya."
Yeah.
You want to come see me play? Come to LA. Because I'm not trying to.
I definitely saw that Filter tour. I forgot about that, but now that you mentioned, and I
Where?
did not. Probably no. I think at Bogart's in Cincinnati. Or no, not Bogart's. They had a venue called.
We played Bogart's.
But there was a venue called, I think it was called the Garage. It was a big venue. It was right down by the stadium, like where the Reds play, and it wasn't open that long. But I think that's where I saw you. But it might have been Bogart's.
No, you're right. We played with Sponge at Bogart's.
Okay.
Because I remember that's where we got on our first bus. And I remember pulling up to Bogart's, and we had played across the street from Bogart's before.
Sudsy Malone's.
Huh?
Sudsy Malone's?
Yeah, Sudsy Malone's at the washateria and the club. Yeah. And then but we were like, looking at Bogart's going, "Man, someday we're gonna play here. This is awesome." And we opened for Sponge there, which was really cool. But we pulled up in our buses like this crappy old 67 American Eagle, and we thought it was the coolest thing ever. And as we pull up, Sponge's bus is right there. They all came off the bus, and they all just came up and hugged us and gave us, I think, a bottle of champagne. And one of them knew I was sober, so they gave me an O'Doul's or something. And they treated us like brothers on that tour.
Yeah. And
Filter, let's just say not so much.
Yeah, I understand that. And Sponge, another band, 30 years later, Vinny's still doing it. And you've taken them out on the Summerland tour, and they're still out there.
Killing it. A great rock and roll band.
The other thing is, I think on the Hagfish tour, wasn't Triple Fast Action part of that bill too?
Not on that tour.
Okay.
They were. Let's see. I don't know if you can see it. Where is that? So, can you see that up there?
Oh yeah.
So March 26, 1996. That was that was just as the album was going. That was Everclear, Hagfish, and Triple Fast Action.
Awesome.
Can you see that at the Fillmore?
Yeah. I Triple Fast is one of those bands for me is that underappreciated. Like I love those records, and they probably sold like 5,000 copies total.
I know. You know what's funny? And I became friends with Wes, who I think is an agent now.
Yeah. Yep.
But great songwriter. That first album is just killer.
You've got the upcoming summer tour. That's I did notice. I went to that setlist.fm site. Are you familiar with that? It basically, people can input when they go see a show. They can upload the set list, and so you can see kind of what songs are being played.
We're gonna change the set list for this. I'm already working on it.
Because I was gonna say, like, I noticed like World of Noise songs. Most of them. Okay, I was gonna say most of them don't get played very often.
No. There's gonna be more. There's gonna be at least 3. Maybe Pacific Wonderland, maybe Blondes, So yeah. Cool. It's going to be a new set, and we're trying to find a new way to start off the set. We got a new backdrop. Yeah. I just put a bunch of money into gear, new cases, and new snare drums for my drummer, and we're going to mix it up. We're going to keep it fresh, man.
So I know Everclear, the current version of Everclear, has been around way longer than any other version of the band. And
3 times as long.
And I know, I'm sure you hate this question, and I'm sure it would be like you asking me, like, so are you ever going to get back together with your high school girlfriend? But is there any chance you would ever do a one-off? Nope.
A one-off? Probably not.
Yeah.
Maybe with one of the guys, yeah. The other guy, I don't see it happening, man.
That totally makes sense to me. I get it, but I'm sure you get that question all the time.
I just don't. I don't look back. I don't go back.
Yep.
You know?
And I don't know if there already is something in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but since I took you there, have you ever contributed something, or if they came to you and okay,
they had all sorts of stuff.
Oh, cool.
For a while, they sent some of the stuff back, and then they asked for some stuff, some other stuff. But they had our suits from and guitars from Woodstock for a long time.
Awesome.
And but I think they still got a couple of guitars.
Yeah, and I do know my friend.
Give them back. I'll take them back. No problem.
My friends would kill me if I don't ask you about this. So I did read between Sparkle and Fade and So Much for the Afterglow. Like you made another record, right? Or you had demos. What was the Pure White Evil?
That was Afterglow. That was the first name. Okay. We recorded a record in the fall of '96, which most of those songs became So Much for the Afterglow. But the tentative title, the working title, was Pure White Evil. And I dropped a couple songs out over Christmas, wrote a couple new songs, including I'll Buy You a New Life, something else, I forget what's the other song, and then mixed it, and wasn't great. Yeah. My A&R guy told me it wasn't great. I knew it wasn't great, and No Ego was going to tell me that it was. So I stayed in New York, worked a bunch of, wrote some new songs, made a bunch of notes of old songs, and called the guys and decided to try to get Andy Wallace to mix it, and he did, and but he couldn't mix it till June, which gave me 4 or 5 months to go in the studio and record all sorts of stuff, and we recorded El Distorto, One Hit Wonder, song from American Movie, which went to the next record.
Yep.
Something else. Why I Don't Believe in God, which had been a Colorfinger song, and we did it as a band song, and then the song called So Much for the Afterglow, which became the title track. So, and we pulled some songs off it, put those on it, remixed, put new production, and then in June, mixed it with Andy Wallace. Came out in October.
Okay. I didn't know if there was like this secret long lost record of stuff that no one had ever heard.
No.
Okay.
No, everybody's pretty much heard everything, I think. Yeah. Even stuff I don't want them to hear. I got into a debate the other day about the song called Deep In and Empty Out that was a demo, and they're like, why didn't you finish this? And I'm like, because I didn't want to. I didn't feel it's that good of a song.
Yeah.
Well, it's your best song ever. Well, I go, well, if you feel that, then okay.
Right.
I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
I as an Everclear fan, I would say that's not true. But as the guy who wrote the song, my opinion, bad choice of words now, but that trumps your opinion, lady.
Yeah. Very good.
But anyway.
Cool. Well, I am done with my questions, so I appreciate the time.
One more?
No, I'm done.
Okay, great.
Appreciate the time.
Great to see you, Chip.
Yeah, great to see you too.